Welcome back, AI curious folk, to AI Ramblings Daily Podcast, episode 85. I'm Michael Parekh, your human AI guide, and today's theme, Big Tech AI Goldilocks Strategies. Large, medium, small, all just right for now. Let's get on. 3 events I want to talk through. And the theme, again, as I mentioned, is the number of the big tech companies are all rolling out their latest and greatest AI models and AI data center infrastructure strategies at expense of billions of dollars. And this is kind of running across the spectrum, large, medium, and small. And every one of these strategies makes sense given what's going on around those specific arenas. Let me walk through. First off, we're gonna talk about OpenAI and Anthropic, but Anthropic today, both companies have been rolling out their latest frontier models. You've had OpenAI release 5.5. There's upgrades to that in the wings. Anthropic today rolled out 4.8, Opus 4.8, which is their frontier model, and it's on a very rapid clip. It's only 41 days after 4.7, which some said was not quite good enough here and there, and so they fixed some of the issues, and it's got a big new feature for enterprises, something called dynamic workflow that allows big enterprises to implement multi-hundred agent workflows and manage it all. These are all the kinds of things that all of these companies are going to have to do as they really get ready with these products for enterprises, because all of them, I'm talking about OpenAI and Anthropic, have found their product market fit in the marketplace, which is AI coding, and then workflow applications on top of that. OpenAI has Codex, Anthropic has Claude Code and Cowork. You've got others coming up in the wings, Microsoft, Copilot, GitHub, which I've written about a lot. Again, all of these discussions, links as usual, will be in the source notes. And then you have Google with Gemini, which also had its big releases, and they've got more in the works, and they have their version of Spark, which is their workflow product, and that's supposed to come up with a pro version any day now. And then you have, of course, Anthropic is also expected to release the mythical Mythos, which is this big next-gen version of the model, even on top of today's Opus 4.8 release. But that one, if you recall, got held back because of cybersecurity concerns, and they've been discussing this in earnest with governments and agencies and companies at the highest levels to make sure all of those concerns are mitigated. And that is expected to roll out as well in the next few weeks. So this will be a continued rolling story. I wanted to focus on it just because this is a very rapid run. All of the customers are basically on a run that they've not seen in most tech waves before at this kind of product iteration. And this is par for the course, again, across all of these companies. And then the other companies that are not at the leading edge, bleeding edge, as it were, the Metas and the Elon Musk's Grok and so on, are also in the running. And that is my second topic I wanted to discuss, because Meta confirmed that they are focusing on something that I'd actually written about that they do over 3 years ago, which is pursue an AWS-style enterprise strategy. And again, good things take time. And so Mark Zuckerberg was quoted, and I'll have this link up on the show notes, but he said a Meta cloud computing business is, quote, definitely on the table. And the information had a story that broke also that said Meta is launching a new enterprise push to boost business adoption of AI tools. Why are they doing this? Well, recognize that Meta is going to spend over $145 billion this year on AI data infrastructure. They're going to use a lot of that for their own use, which with across its 3.5 billion user properties. So everything from Facebook to Instagram to WhatsApp will use a lot of this infrastructure, along with using that infrastructure to serve ads. And Meta, along with Google, is one of the 2 foremost companies using AI to serve sophisticated ad strategies with AI. And I'll have a lot more to write about that separately and talk about that separately. There are a lot of big issues that will change the internet, as it were. And I've written a lot about that separately, but it's a big topic. And that's what they're using this infrastructure for. But even with that, with the $140+ billion they're spending, there's some excess capacity. So defray the cost by getting business customers. So that is the strategy. We saw an echo of this from Elon Musk, who literally, ahead of his IPO for SpaceX later this month, literally signed a $40+ billion contract with Anthropic, his arch rival, to let Anthropic use Grok Colossus data center infrastructure to serve their models. So a lot of frenemies action here. These companies, especially the Meta and the Elon companies, are going to be doing more of these AWS-style opportunities. And this means that the number of companies that are providing services, infrastructure services to businesses will expand. The top three, of course, are Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. And then you've got Oracle and Neo Clouds like CoreWeave, and that is also expanding worldwide. And now you've got these other two big companies also expanding into this space, again, leveraging the infrastructure they're spending and see if they could defray some of the expenses, resources, and also learn how to develop. Because remember, all these models need data. And as customers use this stuff at scale, that data, when it's allowed, can, and with the appropriate safeguards and confidentiality containment, can be used to continue to train future versions of these models. So there's a lot of plus, win-win-win stuff going on here. And that is the interesting thing about what Meta just announced. So I wanted to focus on that. So we talked about the large and the medium, and now we're going to talk about the small. And here it's Apple. They've got their worldwide developer conference coming up on June 8th, so imminent. And they've been long expected to partner with Gemini on the Google side and power their AI version of Siri, which has been delayed for a long time, for months. And so there's a new reports on their announcements at WWDC this year will focus on edge and local AI computing. Again, this is something I've written extensively about, expecting this for over 2 to 3 years now. And I'll have some of those notes in the links. But Bloomberg, again, provided some details on how Apple is going to, as expected, leverage their really unique vertical tech stack, all the way from the Apple Silicon, all the way to the devices that serve over 2.5 billion users across computers, laptops, and desktops, and phones, smartphones, obviously iPhones, and wearables like my AirPods, and they're going to expected to come out with glasses and a whole bunch of other things, presumably this year or next, especially now on September 1st, that Tim Cook is going to be elevated to the chairman role on the board. And the two senior executives, as I've written about, John Turnus and Johnny Srouji, are going to be basically running the company on the hardware and software side, but both of them have very deep hardware supply chain backgrounds, thanks, of course, to Tim Cook's scale. And Apple remains, in my mind, uniquely positioned with the supply chain versus everybody else, because hardware is going to be one of the toughest things to scale. I think it's relatively straightforward to do millions of devices like Google has done with their Pixel smartphones, etc. But when we're talking about consistently scaling hundreds of millions of devices per year, like clockwork, with all the geopolitical issues around supply chains, especially in China, and then working around them, etc., there are very few companies that can manage that at scale, especially when prices of all this stuff and supply constraints for the memory, as I've written about extensively, are going up. Across almost any category you can imagine, prices are going up. And Apple is getting more competitive on that front. And in fact, we are seeing signs that on the PC side, which is hundreds of OEMs basically building on Windows from Microsoft, this year alone, we're already seeing drops of 10, 15, 20% in volumes because prices are substantially higher for computers and laptops. And that is Apple's big advantage. So they're focused on their side of the Goldilocks spectrum, which are local edge devices that run local models, small models, and leverage the larger models from Gemini and presumably others in the cloud as needed with the appropriate privacy and trust and security things that Apple is very, very focused on, much more so relatively than all the other competitors, especially because they don't have as much of a business to protect on the advertising side, with which of course Google and Meta do in spades. They, however, do have a very large ambition on subscription services, which can run off the local and the cloud blended services across a whole bunch of bottom-up applications across all these hardware devices. It sounds very complicated, and it is, but from a user point of view, as and when it rolls out, it becomes simpler potentially to manage and coordinate. And that's something we'll talk about a lot more as well. So that's my outline of the Goldilocks large, medium, small strategy. Let's talk a little bit about the gadget AI part of our show. Today, I wanted to just highlight Oura, which is the AI healthcare company that is one of the strongest brands for AI rings, smart rings, and they are also potentially being talked about as an IPO candidate this year. They announced Ring 5, which is 40% smaller than the previous ring and about 15% more expensive, now closer to $400, ahead of their 2026 IPO. Bloomberg broke the details. I'll have, the details in the show notes. It'll do a lot more interesting things. Again, this is really meant for the early adopters who are really super into exercise, athletics, healthcare, and monitoring all these things. And they're cramming more things into this ring, patented stuff, healthcare stuff, AI-driven stuff, including focused on detecting blood pressure changes, hypertension, sleep apnea, lots of things in a simple ring. And that is going to, of course, complement other things that are being developed by other companies, like the wristbands I talked about yesterday from Google with their Fitbit Air, and the Whoop band, which is also a company that is also looking for an IPO. Apple has ambitions here, Meta has ambitions here, Amazon, etc. So everyone is going to be involved, the elephants and the smaller companies, but it's going to be a very active area. It's very early days, and I wanted to highlight that. And I also will put up a link on some of the stuff I've written about the Oura Ring. And Apple also has ambitions in smart rings, although they don't have one yet. But stay tuned, as I would say. Next, I just wanted to touch on a couple of questions that came up along these lines of the discussion. One question was, do I wear an AI smart ring? The answer is no. I kind of continue to rely on my Apple Watch Ultra. It's good enough with 3 rings, etc. But yes, I am kind of tempted by these newer gizmos, as if anything, to just try them. So I might be tempted with an Oura Ring. So I'll have to take a look at that. And then the second related question is, what are some of the issues around this form factor of AI smart devices that would hold me back? And to me, it's less than the device itself. I mean, rings are rings and they're straightforward. Obviously, people have preferences, design and style, and how many rings, if they have a wedding ring, etc. And so all of those things become an issue. But I think the bigger issue for me, not just for rings, but across these devices, is that this is another siloed device, an app to maintain and track and coordinate with all the AI health apps. And one of the issues in this category and other categories is that all these companies, especially the large ones, are siloed. They want everything in their walled garden, and then it becomes more cognitive load on the user to kind of manage, what was my ring app say versus my wrist app and versus my watch app. And so then I have to coordinate and do all the work of comparing the readings and so on. MKBHD just had a review of monitoring his metrics across just 3 wristbands, the Apple Watch and the Whoop band and the Google Fit Air, and the results on the metrics were different across the thing. So again, if you're really into this stuff, that becomes an additional cognitive load, and there's very little there's help for people that supports this stuff to make sense of this horizontally. I would expect at some point we will have third-party AI apps that, with permission, if they're allowed to, within the silos, get the data from these things, from these various silos, and then help the user make head or tail sense of this stuff and monitor this stuff so that they can actually get a lot more signal from the walled silos and the noise across these devices. So that's my core issue. If you can call it an issue, it's a broader thing that I think the business and the industry needs to figure out. Okay, so that's what I had for today for you all. I hope you found it interesting. Today's AI Reset to Zero post, number 1100. We hit that number. It's about Robinhood offering AI stock trading, which is actually very interesting because just a few weeks ago I talked about people on the institutional side really starting to experiment with hundreds of millions of dollars in hedge funds that are run by AI. Now, you and I can do this in our Robinhood portfolio with amounts as little as $10 or $100. So that's interesting. A lot more detail. Take a look at that if you have an interest. And otherwise, I would welcome you back tomorrow, a number 86 and AI Reset to Zero 1101. Thanks for joining us, AI curious folk. Stay tuned.